Guitar pedals like these have been the secret sauce to get your melodies to stand out, with one of them setting itself apart from all the others. Now I'm of course talking about the Hologram Microcosm, a cradle-to-delay pedal that has been used by seemingly every industry producer since it dropped. Now in today's video I'm going to walk you through the pedal and how it works, and I'm going to show you how it's integrated into my setup, and then of course we're going to make some music with it, cook up some loops, cook up some beats. That is going so hard, dude. And in the end, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about my personal experience using the pedal, about the pricing, and also if I recommend it or not. Now with that being said, let's go straight into it. Now for this section, I'm not gonna go into too much detail, as there are tons of great YouTube tutorials that show you exactly how you can use this pedal and how it should be used. I just want you to have a basic understanding of how the pedal works if you've never seen it before. Now the pedal looks pretty complicated when you look at it at first, but it's not that deep, trust me. So, on the right, we have this encoder, and with this encoder we select one of the 11 effects that are in here. So we have all of these effects available to us. So we have micro loops, granules, glitch, and multi-delay, and in each of these groups there are single effects. So we have mosaic, sequence, glide, yada yada yada. And then inside each of these effects, for example micro loop mosaic would be one effect, we have 4 different variations, and these are displayed down here. So by the yellow light you can see that the first variation of the mosaic effect is selected, and the variations just change how they behave a little bit. So it's basically the same effect, just that it has some different patterns or a different tone or something. Now these 8 knobs on the left control how each effect works. So this one is the most important one. It determines the mix, so you can blend between the dry signal that you send into the microcosm and the wet signal that's outputted. Underneath it we have the loop level that controls the volume of the phrase looper, which I won't touch on in this video. I haven't been using it, but you can record phrases into this engine and play them back. Then we have a filter, so this just filters the wet signal, gives it a low pass filter. We have space, which adds a reverb, and you can also select between 4 different types of reverbs by holding down shift and then turning that knob. These 4 knobs on the right don't change depending on what effect you selected. They're just always the same. They always control the global mix slash reverb slash filter. But the knobs on the left are more meant to control the individual effect. Now the activity knob controls how much activity there is in effect, and I can't really explain this without showing it to you, so here's a short sound demo. Then we have the shape knob, which controls the volume envelope of our affected signal. Underneath these 2 we have the time control. So this section allows us to either sync the effect to an external clock signal or also to just freely set the tempo, which is crucial with a delay effect like this. And last but not least, we have the repeats that control how often an effect gets repeated until it slowly fades out. Now I basically go by selecting one of the effects and one of the variations of that effect, setting the mix to around 50%, the filter obviously to 100, the space to 0, and then I just play around with activity and repeats until I find something that sounds kind of cool. And then from there I can adjust the mix, I can filter it, I can add a little bit of reverb, and I can also adjust the shape of the whole effect. Now one section where I don't see a lot of good information on YouTube is the whole routing and use of an external effect like that, because usually guitar pedals are meant to be used by guitar players, so they'll just hook up their guitar instantly through a pedal chain and then run it into an amplifier or something like that. But obviously for us producers who are working inside the box, we can't have that workflow. We have to have a way to get our audio signal out of our computer into that pedal and then back into it. So I'm just going to show you my way of connecting my PC to the synths and also to the pedal. So basically everything starts right here with my PC, which is my main workstation, and this is connected to my audio interface via USB. And the audio interface obviously puts out the signal from my PC to the speakers, but it also interconnects with all my synths and the microcosm. So I have my Poly D that's right behind me there set up to go inside the audio interface, and from there obviously to my PC. I have my second synth, the vocal bass, also set up to go to the audio interface and from there to the PC. The microcosm is connected by audio ins and outs, which means that I can send any signal I want that is going through my audio interface to that microcosm and record it back in. So basically I could take this signal from the poly D and send it into the microcosm, get it back into the audio interface, and then run it to my PC, process it, run it back through my audio interface, and then have it going to my speakers. It sounds a little bit complicated, but this gives me the most freedom creatively with which signals I want to run into the pedal and which I won't. When I'm working inside the DAW, I also have my master keyboard setup, which is the Studio Logic SL88 Studio. So this is connected via USB, and basically it's sending and receiving MIDI data from my PC all the time. What that means is that I can use it as a clock source to sync my synthesizers and the pedal to my DAW tempo. Now right here is the second way of routing the audio and MIDI signal. So again, the PC is connected to the audio interface, which is connected to my speakers. But this time I don't have an output going from the audio interface into the microcosm, that's not there. Instead, I'm sending the output of the vocal bass into the hologram microcosm and then getting that signal into the audio interface and into the DAW. This time to keep everything in sync, because we're going from the vocal bass as the main instrument. I have the clock signal going to the poly D, and then from the poly D it's going into the microcosm. So everything is at the same tempo. Now with these things covered, let's get into making some actual music. Let's go. Now what I like to do when I'm working with synths and analog gear is I'll just have like a melody layer going on in the background, and then I'm just gonna improvise over that melody layer. So I'm just gonna use one of my own sounds. These melody layers are from an upcoming sound kit. More info pretty soon. Also gonna be free, but yeah, stay tuned. Yeah, that is perfect. So just have this on loop, and then I'm gonna take the input from the synth. As you can see, I chose a quite plucky sound and a quite plucky melody, so we have a lot of these gaps, and these gaps are basically going to be filled with the microcosm once we use that. So I'm just going to use an external audio effect. So we're going to send this to our send pedal, so that's what's going into the microcosm, and then I'm just going to get my return pedal, so that's what the signal that's coming back from the pedal. I'm going to set it to dry wet 0%, so we don't get any of the sound coming in from this track. So if you listen to this, sounds exactly as before. But instead, I'm just gonna create a second track, and that's also gonna get the return from the pedals. And this way, now obviously I want to have the delay synced up, so I'm just going to use this MIDI cable that's coming out of my master keyboard, and I'm just going to plug that into the microcosm so we can sync the tempo. Let's actually record that in, so I'm just going to solo that track and record. Now if you play these two together, they sound a little bit, muddy and crowded up. And something that can help with that is a sidechain compressor. So I'm just gonna open up a compressor, activate the sidechain, and get the input from our main synth sound. So, just the unaffected dry sound. And then I'm just gonna drag down the threshold by a bunch. So basically every time the main sound is playing, the volume of the affected sound is getting reduced. It just has a little bit more room to live. Now the next thing I want to add is a super fat sub bass. So I'm gonna go to the poly D again and create a nice patch. I think it would sound pretty dope if we ran the main chords that we started the whole melody with through the pedal as well. So I'm just gonna do that real quick. Just some super dope texture again. Now reverse the whole thing. And let's also add else pulsar to this. Alright, I think the melody is sounding pretty dope. It could need some, touching up later on. But for the moment, we're good, I think. So let's start adding some drums. And a heavy 808 for the second part. Make the 808 hit even harder by adding an open hat. Add a perk. I'm debating right now if I should add a kick to this or not, because the beat is already hitting super hard, so... Dude, this is going hard, man. Love it. Let's add a rim. Alright, I think we're done with the first beat. This is what we got. Now for the second one, I want to process the sound that's coming from my PC through the pedal. So I'm just going to select one of my one-shots. Something like this ARP. And for this one, I'm going to use one of the micro loop presets. So let's reverse that and then start working off of this. And I think something like Cymatic's Illusion would sound pretty dope on this. Yes, sir. Let's see if we can find any cool phrases from my upcoming phrase kit. This sounds crazy, dude. So maybe we can run this through the pedals again and see if we find something that's a little bit more ambient that we can add to this. Yeah, this makes for a super dope B part. So that's literally just 3 elements in one melody that are going together and they sound crazy. Now let's add grid, which is basically a halftime effect. That is going so hard, dude. Crazy. Alright, now I took a little bit of a break, but it's time to finish this beat up. So for this one, I'm gonna use the J Cactus dominant drum kit. Let's get the simple hi-hat and then maybe we have some hype midis in here. Yeah, that bounce crazy. Let's add an 808. Dude, there's some good sounds in here. Let's pitch down the whole melody a little bit, so maybe 2 semitones. Let's actually put in a second 808, like a different sound for the B section. Something that has a little bit less high end. That perk sounds fire. Right here, I also want to add a kick. Yeah, count a snare like that. This is crazy. Like, this is a perfect type beat. You have a lot of like cool noises in there. There's cool perk stuff, but it's really super basic. Like, there's so much space for an artist to get over this beat. Alright, now this beat is done as well. Let's give it a final listen. Now, first of all, what do I like about the pedal? It's a super creative effect, that's for sure. You can do things that you can't do with other external hardware, and the combination of delay, granular, weird things that are just happening, it's great. You can actually get some pretty good results. Also, it's hardware, so you're not fiddling around with a mouse on the screen and, changing the parameters via a door controller or your mouse, but you're actually having a hardwired knob that does exactly one thing and that you can touch. And that's just incredibly inspiring to me. Besides that, the build quality is pretty solid, so this thing is gonna last you a few years at least. Now, things I dislike or I just don't appreciate as much. So, first of all, you really have to treat this as an ambience machine, and maybe that's where I was wrong when I first got into this, because I thought it would be super dope to just make like cool little phrases and accents and that sort of stuff, but really it takes up a lot of room once you add it to any sort of sound. So if you have a cool ARP going on already, adding this on top is probably just gonna crowd up your whole mix and make the thing sound muddy. So you really have to be careful on how you add it and where you add it. I also think that there's too many modes and variations, and it's sometimes hard to pinpoint what each variation exactly does different to the one before, at least if you're not using the user manual. I would much rather prefer having half the amount of effects and just having sonically really different sounding effects than something that always sounds kind of similar and where you can't really distinguish what each variation does. Now, my last point isn't really about this unit itself, but the way it's been used over the past couple of years, because when it came out, it was really a cool new thing to have. Like, there wasn't really good software emulations or effects that would do similar things, and on the hardware market, there weren't really any good alternatives as well. So this thing was pretty unique, and that's why it's made its name, and it's been used in countless productions since then, and now there is software plugins that do pretty much exactly the same thing at a fraction of the cost. Gonna talk about that in a minute. So I feel like it isn't as unique anymore. Like, if you're purely going for, this microcosm sound, you don't have to have this unit. Now, the pedal is being sold exclusively on Hologram Electronics, which means you can't get it at local resellers like Sweetwater or Thurman. And because of this, I'm able to tell you the price is exactly $459 US, which is not too bad for a product like that. The issue I'm having is that you can only order this on Hologram Electronics, because this means that you have to pay import taxes and that you have to pay shipping, which brings the total cost for the unit, at least for me, up to over $600 US. Also, because you can't get this from external resellers, the price is probably not gonna drop anytime soon at least. Now, if you're into hardware and you have some other more basic effects already, I would definitely say yes, this is a recommendation. It's maybe a little bit overpriced for what it does and, for the alternatives that are out there in terms of software or, other effect pedals. But if you're looking for something like this, it's pretty dope. The effect is kind of unique on the hardware market, and you can do all sorts of things with it, because it's a multi-effect pedal technically. Now, if you don't have any hardware yet, and you want to get into it, and you have some money to spend, I can also recommend this to you, because then, as said, the unit is quite expensive, so I wouldn't necessarily buy this as my first pedal. Also, you need to have an audio interface like the 8920 that has inputs and outputs, and the point right here is really that it's nicer to have hardware, to have physical buttons that you can touch, than to, fiddle around with software. Now, if you're just into the sound of the microcosm and we want to get that cool effect and you think you can't get this without, spending the money, I wouldn't recommend getting this, because if the video hasn't already made it clear, there is software alternatives out there. I'm gonna check out a few of them, mainly the ones from Prod by Hayes, on our channel soon, so stay tuned for that. But as far as I can tell, there's really nothing sonically that differs this hardware unit from something that you would do on software and that you would tweak inside the box. So maybe if you want to get some hardware, get some different effects as well, maybe something analog that you really just can't get inside the box, and go with that first. Now, with all this being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think about the Microcosm. Is it overhyped? Is it not? Is it worth the money? I would love to hear about that. See you in the next video. Bye.